Hello Planeswalkers, this is Eric from Bane Alley Magic coming at you again with another Top 13 video. This week, the Top 13 green cards for Commander. I hope you enjoyed the last Game Days video, it was a really crazy game. Next time I'll fix the brightness issue, and yes, in the works is another Game Days Commander gameplay video where I'm playing my Nicol Bolas the Ravager deck, so stay tuned for that. Now again, this week we're counting down the top 13 essential green cards for Commander, and I want to start by saying that obviously as soon as you splash in other colors you may be able to find better choices fitting your strategy, and that's fine, but this is a list of mono green cards specifically that could potentially go in any deck running green. Also, the order of the list is always subject to arbitrary circumstances, so I just want to remind you that this is my personal top 13 choices, although I have utilized assistance of critiques from close friends. Also, before we get to the honorable mentions, of which there are many, I want to remind you to please like and subscribe. Helps out a lot. Now, there are many honorable mentions in green because green just has a lot of really powerful cards, really cool cards that could go in a lot of strategies. So we're going to start with Avenger of Zendikar, 5 generic and 2 green for Elemental, which is a 5/5. When an Avenger of Zendikar enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. And it also has Landfall, which means whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may put a +1/+1 counter on each plant you control. So the important thing to remember here is that you want to play Avenger of Zendikar before you play your land for the turn, and that way you can get all the +1/+1 counters on your plant creatures the turn that Avenger of Zendikar comes out. Now, this didn't make the top 13 list, even though it is a really cool card, just because, you know, it's kind of more creature-based strategy, token strategy, maybe a +1/+1 strategy. It does fit in a lot of decks, but it doesn't fit in every deck, which is why it didn't make the hit. Alright, same with Craterhoof Behemoth, which is 5 generic and 3 green for a 5/5 beast, which has haste, and when Craterhoof Behemoth enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and get +X/+X until the end of the turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. So this thing will just make your creatures humongous if you have a lot of creatures. Again, this is if you're playing a creature-based strategy, or, you know, of course, if you're playing a token strategy, this is, you know, a game ender. For example, if you have 9 creatures on the battlefield and then you cast this, you're going to have a total of 10 creatures, and all of your creatures are going to get +10/+10 and trample. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And since this has haste, it gets to attack right away as well. So Craterhoof Behemoth is great for ending games in that creature-based strategy. Same with Triumph of the Hordes. 2 generic and 2 green for a sorcery. Until the end of the turn, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain trample and infect. So this can end games, again, when you have that creature strategy where your creatures are getting in and dealing combat damage. Doesn't go with every single deck, but, you know, most of the time that's what green's trying to do. So it's a great honorable mention. And the Great Aurora is 6 generic and 3 green for a sorcery. It says each player shuffles all cards from his or her hand and all permanents he or she owns into his or her library, then draws that many cards. Each player may put any number of land cards from his or her hand onto the battlefield. Exile the Great Aurora. So the reason this is an honorable mention is because it's kind of the only mono green way to board wipe all the creatures. You know, that though it does have the potential of getting those same creatures back, you know, if you are playing a mono green deck, this is something to consider for your board wipes. You know, even though, you know, potentially when you're playing any monocolor strategy, you want to also consider all those colorless options, you know, like Nevernal's Disc, you know, or you know, any sort of colorless board wipe might be better than this, but you might want to include this on top of those as well. So something to consider, so I'd put it in the honorable mentions. Alright, so let's get into it with the top 13, starting with Song of the Dryads at number 13, 2 generic and a green for an enchantment aura, enchant permanent. That's what's really important here. You can get any permanent, you can get a special land, you can get a artifact, enchantment, you can get a planeswalker or a creature. And enchanted permanent is a colorless forest land, so it just becomes a forest. So they do have the potential of getting it back if they can destroy this enchantment, but if they can't, then it's pretty much just a forest. Even if they board wipe, destroying all creatures, this is now a land, so that creature isn't going to get destroyed. It's not part of all the creatures, it's now a land. But, you know, if they destroy the enchantment, they get it back, which is why this is number 13. Good to consider for a green deck, certainly. Next, we got Tempt with Discovery, 3 generic and a green for a sorcery that has a tempting offer, which says search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Each opponent may search his or her library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. For each opponent who searches a library this way, search your library for a land card and put it on the battlefield. Then each player who searched a library this way shuffles it. So you have the potential in a 4-player game of getting 4 lands if each of your opponents chooses to also search for a land. And again, it's not a basic land, mind you, it's any land. So you can get, your Dark Depths and your Thespian Stage, you can get your Valakut, or you can get any color land you need, or your Temple of the False God maybe, right? So very cool card. It gets you all those special lands that you need. Oh yeah, also Glacial Chasm might be a option there, right? Or a Cavern of Souls, you might need. Tempt with Discovery will get it for you. But since it only, if no one else takes the offer, you might only get 1 land out of it. So that's why it's number 12. Acidic Slime is 3 generic and 2 green for a 2/2 ooze with Death Touch, and when Acidic Slime enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. So this is really great removal, a little expensive on the converted mana cost, but in Commander we don't have that much of a problem getting 5 mana, and having a 2/2 Death Touch creature left over is pretty sweet in the deal as well. I had a really hard time choosing between a lot of the artifact and enchantment removal spells for green, so forgive me if you might think this should go up higher on the list, but I do think that the other choice I made that's going to get a much higher rating on the list is one I think you'll all agree is one more people are going to run more often just because it's a lower converted mana cost. But what's great about this is it has Death Touch, and it can also hit a land, and that's pretty powerful too. Alright, so our number 10 goes to Beastmaster Ascension, 2 generic and a green for an enchantment, which is actually, honestly, one of the most powerful anthems in the whole game. Whenever a creature you control attacks, you may put a quest counter on Beastmaster Ascension, and as long as Beastmaster Ascension has 7 or more quest counters on it, creatures you control get +5/+5. That is huge. Your creatures just get enormous with this. And if you put this down on a turn when you have 7 creatures on the battlefield that can all attack, as soon as those 7 creatures attack, they all get +5/+5. The counters go on it, and boom, this thing goes off, and your creatures all get huge. So this is definitely one of the more powerful anthems in the whole game for only 3 mana. That's just great. Fabulous card, goes in almost every green deck totally. But only number 10 because of course it's more of a creature strategy. So next we got Zendikar Resurgent, also sort of a creature strategy one, but this one definitely is a really cool ramp card. So 5 generic and 2 green for an enchantment. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to your mana pool of any type that land produced. So the mana types are white, blue, black, red, green, and colorless. Whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. So this thing in any sort of creature deck is absolutely essential. Almost more than all those other cards. As if you're playing a deck that runs off of creatures, which most decks do, you need this card. This card just storms off all by itself. You have double mana, and so you have all the mana you need to cast your creature spells, and as soon as you do, you draw another card. You have the potential of drawing another creature spell, and you have tons of mana to cast that spell, and this card definitely scares your opponents as soon as they see it. If they are experienced players, they're going to be like, oh boy, here we go. Zendikar Resurgent. Yeah. Not that expensive, I don't think, on the market. I could be wrong, but I'm definitely going to pick up some more because I want to build some more green decks. Alright, number 8, we have Sakura Tribe Elder, which is 1 generic and a green for a Snake Shaman, a 1/1, and it has Sacrifice Sakura Tribe Elder, search your library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. So this guy is also known as Steve to Magic card players, a term of endearing, because, he's used in a lot of decks, and he's great for a lot of strategies. You're playing a sacrifice deck, or a deck that'll recur your creatures, a reanimator deck or something like that, or you just need an extra body on the battlefield that could potentially get you a land card. He does all of that. So Sakura Tribe Elder is just a card I've seen in so many decks, and works really great because you can also use them as a blocker before you get the land, because you can always, respond to damage. You can block first, then respond to the damage by sacrificing it and getting the land, and the creature that they blocked is still considered to be blocked, and the damage doesn't actually happen, even if the creature has a... Well, I'm sorry. If the creature does have trample, though, the damage will go through. But as long as they don't have trample, the damage will be prevented. Yeah. So on to number 7, we got Beast Within. 2 generic and a green for an instant, and it says destroy target permanent. Anything. Destroy it. Its controller creates a 3/3 green beast creature token. So they get a beast in exchange for losing their most powerful permanent, which might even be a creature, which is why this is essential for green decks, because green has a very hard time removing creatures. They have fight abilities, but this is a sure way to just destroy any creature, and they get a 3/3 green beast token. Not that big of a deal, in a color that just struggles to destroy the creature in the first place. A 3/3 beast with no abilities is going to be a lot less of a problem usually than whatever you're trying to destroy. And more importantly, this is instant speed spell, and that's why it is just one of the best green removal spells in the whole game. Absolutely. Alright, Croson Grip is 2 generic and a green for another instant, and it also has Split Second, which means as long as this spell is on the stack, players can't cast spells or activate abilities that aren't mana abilities, which is why it made this list, because that basically means it can't be countered, and it can't be responded to. Your players just can't even respond. Croson Grip is going to resolve, and it says destroy target artifact or enchantment, so very powerful artifact enchantment removal spell. Alright, on to number 5. Number 5, we got Reclamation Sage. And this is the one I was saying beat out Acidic Slime for me, because it's just so much cheaper to cast. It's 3 mana for an Elf Shaman, which might be really relative in a lot of decks. Running Elf Tribal happens a lot in green. And when Reclamation Sage enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. So, this is one, you'll usually have both this and Acidic Slime, but this ranked up higher for me because... a lot of decks don't care about having big creatures out or death touch creatures out. They just care about spending 3 mana to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and this gives you that added bonus of having a little body left over afterwards. So, essential for any green deck, absolutely. Eternal Witness is 1 generic and 2 green for a human shaman, a 2/1, and when Eternal Witness enters the battlefield, you may return target card from your graveyard to your hand. So I've seen this pretty much go in every single green deck out there, and what do you know, it's number 4, so pretty high on the list here. We're almost getting into the top 3. So Eternal Witness is very often going to get you back that Cyclonic Rift, that very important board wipe or removal spell like Beast Within or the Great Aurora, just what you need to stay in the game, or sometimes to even end the game, right? Maybe you'll get that Crater Hoof Behemoth back because you didn't end the game with it the first time, Just the ability to get absolutely any card back to your hand is fabulous, and, it comes on a body, so very important, very essential card. Alright, so here we go, on to the top 3, and for the number 3 spot, we got 2 cards, Kodama's Reach and Cultivate. So, Cultivate and Kodama's Reach are both at number 3 because they are the exact same card. So let's read it. We got 2 generic and a green for a sorcery that says search your library for up to 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, and put one onto the battlefield tapped and the other into your hand, then shuffle your library. So both of these cards are the exact same thing, and they are just really essential to any green strategy, even if you're playing multicolored, especially if you're playing multicolored, because this gets you 2 basic lands, right? It'll get you up to 2 different colors that you need, and, a lot of ramp spells, they'll only get you 1, this gets you 2, that's why this went up so high on the list. As soon as you're playing creature-based strategies, you got a lot of creatures that do these same abilities, a lot of elves, so, especially if you're playing Elf Tribal, there might be a lot of, other elf choices that you might take, but this kind of goes in any sort of strategy, so we like Kodama's Reach and Cultivate. Alright, number 2, Green Sun's Zenith, which is a sorcery for X and a green, and it says search your library for a green green creature card with converted mana cost X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Shuffle Green Sun Zenith into its owner's library. So that last sentence is also really important. Just the ability to recast this card over and over again is very powerful. You get the creature card onto the battlefield, and in 1v1, you will often see a green player cast this on turn 1 with just 1 green mana. And what are they getting out? Well, they're going to get out Dryad Arbor, which is just a land creature. So it's just a forest that's a 1/1 creature as well, but it's basically converted mana cost 0. So they're playing X is 0 and getting Dryad Arbor at turn 1. A very powerful play. But more importantly, this tutors for any creature card in your deck and puts it onto the battlefield. A lot of the Zenith cards, they're not doing that. They're not letting you tutor for something. So this is actually one of the more powerful Zeniths as well. There are a few other green tutors, but I didn't want to fill up all this list with a bunch of green tutors. So I felt like this one was kind of the coolest and the most powerful because you get to cast it over and over again. So that is Green Sun Zenith, and here we go. That sound means that we are finally ready for the #1 green card that is essential for all green decks, and it's Sylvan Library, an enchantment for 1 generic and a green, and it says at the beginning of your draw step, you may draw 2 additional cards. If you do, choose 2 cards in your hand drawn this turn. For each of those cards, you pay 4 life, or put the card on top of your library. So basically, you get to look at the top 3 cards and choose which one you keep in your hand, and if you want, you can keep the other 2 cards as well by paying 4 life for each. So a really sweet draw card spell. Fixing the top of your deck is very powerful, and it just speaks for itself. The ability to get extra cards by paying life is great in Commander. Any black player will tell you that paying life is a small price to pay for drawing cards. Even though it's 4 life, also you just have the option of just rearranging the top of your deck instead of paying that life. So Sylvan Library is a very powerful card. Unfortunately, it isn't very budget friendly, which I'm trying to keep most of these decks these lists budget friendly. Obviously I'm not listing any $1,000 cards on here, but certainly if you have, I think it's $20, perhaps it's up to like $30 now. I'm not, a good resource for the price of cards. I will admit I don't even own one myself because it's just so expensive, and I don't play a mono green deck. Certainly if you're playing mono green, you need this card. You need to spend the money and get this card. It is one of the most essential green draw card spells. If you're looking to save some money, you're splashing in other colors, you can usually find other ways to draw cards where this isn't going to ruin you if you don't have a Sylvan Library. But it does deserve the #1 spot just because it is so powerful, and it's not it's not that expensive compared to some Magic cards out there. Alright, so that's it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is Eric from Bane Alley Magic signing off. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, take care, take it easy.